I've been thinking about whether I even want to make this video because honestly, it's not easy to put it into words. And if you've lived it, you already know that. I've spent most of my life trying to make sense of this experience. No one really teaches you how to live like this. You just realize it slowly. What it's like moving through life with no real support. And when I say no support, I don't mean to just be physically alone. You can be surrounded by people, but still be on your own emotionally, mentally, or even spiritually. It can look like growing up in environments where nothing is obviously wrong, or maybe something clearly is, but either way, no one really sees you. No one reflects back to you that you're okay as you are. It can also be struggling to meet people who actually move in the same direction as you, not just for a season. So you move through life carrying that dislocation of having no real long-term witness to it. For some people, it comes from distance. Immigration, culture, different language, being separated from anything that feels familiar. For others, it's sensitivity or being wired in a way that other people around you never fully understood. And for some, it may be being spiritually open and intuitive from early on. And instead of that being understood, it actually made you feel even more alien. It's almost like being fluent in a language that no one around you speaks. And the hardest part is that you cannot even explain it because the explanation itself requires the language. And at some point you realize it's not just a preference. You don't just prefer depth. It is something that you require. And when that becomes your baseline, you move through life unconfirmed without reflection. Like no one ever quite met you where you are. And it's not always about the absence of people. It's about the presence of depth that has nowhere to land. And over time, you have to decide who you are without anyone handing it back to you. A lot of my life was shaped by figuring things out alone in ways that most people wouldn't even have noticed. Looking back now, I can see how many decisions I had to make without guidance, how many turning points I had to walk through without reassurance, and how often I had to rely on that inner signal without anyone confirming that it was real, but rather the opposite, telling me that my instincts were wrong. It's a very confusing place to be, and if you're there long enough, you don't stay the same. Usually you start adapting. And that adaptation tends to take a few very specific forms. Before you really know yourself, you may start overriding your instincts by following others. For me, I noticed this very early on. There was always this inner pull, clear but not always logical. A sense that something mattered or that a certain direction was mine. And then I would look around and see that other people are walking in the opposite direction towards something completely different, something that looks successful or makes sense on paper, something that gets rewarded. You may start thinking, if everyone is going this direction, there must be something there. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. And certainty is easy to trust even when it's not yours. So you turn, you try their direction, you try what makes sense but doesn't feel right. And I did it more than once. I stepped away from something that felt true, only to end up living the version of life that looked great on the outside, but didn't feel like it was truly mine. And each time I had to go back, figure it out again, and rebuild from scratch. So if you've done that before, if you've turned around and walked in the opposite direction of yourself because everyone else seemed to be so certain and you weren't, don't be too quick to reduce that to failure. Because a lot of the time, this is exactly how this kind of learning happens. By stepping off, getting lost, trying what is not yours, and then feeling clearly enough that it is not yours 100%, so you can come back with more honesty and more certainty. And yes, this kind of learning costs you. It is expensive, but it also builds something, and where it leads you is not always what you expect. Yes, it makes you more aware, resilient, perceptive of patterns, and psychologically deep. But it can also be a profoundly lonely journey, because growth doesn't make life feel more socially full. Often it does the opposite. The more you grow, the more honest you become, the harder it gets to build with other people. Not because you're better than them, that's not what I mean, but because you stop joining things just to avoid being alone. You stop pretending resonance when there isn't any. And you can still understand people and have compassion for what they're going through. But because you understand someone, it doesn't mean that you can build with them, because it requires more than sympathy. It requires alignment. So you may end up living in two layers: the surface, where everything works, and the deeper layer, where your real life is happening. And the more clarity you develop, the less crowded it gets. The clearest, most transparent water usually has no fish in it. Life usually gathers around water that is more dense, more chaotic, and stirred up. So the clearer you become, the quieter it gets. Because clarity makes certain things impossible to fake and harder to force. And this is where things can go wrong, because the real danger isn't being by yourself. It's what you're becoming because of it. Some people turn their pain into identity. Life was just hard, people didn't always show up. So the story becomes fixed, like this is just who I am. Other people may adapt in a different way. They may get so used to doing things on their own that they stop letting anyone in at all. They stop reaching, stop expecting. This is where adaptation turns into distortion. You didn't become independent. You became unreachable. So one person turns the pain into an excuse while the other person turns it into their armor. Both keep you stuck, just in different ways. And if you stay there long enough, the distractions start falling off. And what is left is not peace. It is you, the parts of you you've been avoiding, the grief, the old ache of not being seen the way you needed. And realizing that your drive mostly is not actually yours. Some of it is real, yes, but some of it is you still trying to prove something to people who never fully showed up. And it is important to look at this honestly, because otherwise you can start building your life around a wound and call it destiny. And if you look back, you may start noticing not just how it feels, but what it's actually doing. That thread running through your life, where every time you were left figuring something out on your own, something was being built in you that would only make sense later, even much later in life. This pattern showed up in my own life in many different ways. For example, years spent learning languages that later turned into teaching and made it possible to move to a new country. At another point, it was yoga. Discovering it during one of the darkest periods of my life as a way to hold myself together on days I struggled the most. And what started as scheduling last-minute random classes through ClassPass just to avoid a no-show fee to get myself out of bed eventually led to getting certified as a yoga teacher and became something that I could offer to others. Then it was rebuilding a career, finding a way into a completely new field in a new country, starting over, learning again. There were moments I thought I almost lost myself in the process. And eventually it became guidance and advice that I could offer to other people through mentorship. It's just funny how life works. And over time you start noticing that what you had to learn alone can be repurposed into something useful. That thing that hurt you, isolated you, can later become something that you can name, warn about, and hold for someone else. And it's hard to see that while it is happening, because it feels like chaos while you're in it, like nothing is working out and no one can tell you why. But later, some of that starts making sense. And it doesn't erase how hard and painful those experiences were. It just reveals that meaning doesn't always arrive on time. And after a while, you realize this isn't just your life, it's a pattern, what most people call the hero's journey. Many people have been trying to map this for a really long time. Carl Jung, then Joseph Campbell. It is a very old archetype that describes what happens when someone is taken out of the familiar with no guidance. You lose the map, you go where you didn't plan to go, you endure what you didn't ask for, not knowing how or if it will work out. You learn because you have to. And through that, if you stay conscious, you come back transformed. And if you've been living a life where you had to figure things out on your own without reassurance or support, there's a good chance that you already know this pattern. It just doesn't feel very noble while you're in it. It feels like isolation, confusion. Like, why is this so hard? Why do I always have to figure everything out by myself? And even if you try to share it, others just wouldn't understand because they've never experienced what you're going through. That's because this kind of transformation comes through the ordeal. You don't start special. You become changed because of what you go through. And this is where things start to blur, because there is another archetype that often gets folded into this one until they start to look almost the same. I'm talking about the idea of being chosen, that you are marked from the beginning, set apart, and meant for something great before you had to become it, before anything has tested or shaped you. And this is not new. You can find it in religion, mythology, modern storytelling. It's everywhere on the social media now. But it's a different archetype, because the hero is defined by what they face, while the chosen one is defined by what they are believed to be. And when these two collapse, it creates confusion, where identity comes before experience, and meaning feels assigned instead of built. And at some point, it stops being theoretical. You feel it. You have to learn something that most people never have to learn on their own: the difference between solitude and loneliness. Same situation, different outcome. One can break you, and the other one changes what you're made of. Because at some point, the question becomes simple. If there is no one to hold you, can you learn how to stay with yourself without turning against yourself? Because you start realizing that no one is coming to steady you. So you learn, slowly and maybe imperfectly, how to hold yourself in situations that would have broken you before. And none of that means that people don't matter. They do. Belonging matters. Real support matters. We're not meant to do this alone. And the right people can save you years. But not everyone who comes into your life will support your becoming. Some people will pull you away from your path and call it care. Some will project onto you. Other people may fear for you in ways that will shrink you. Or they may love you, but only in ways to keep you small. And other people may still carry things they have not yet worked through, their own darkness they have not faced. And that will cost you much more than being alone ever would. So yes, support matters, but the right kind of support. Support that steadies your life without hijacking it. Support that makes you more yourself, not less. Support that does not ask you to betray yourself just to belong. And maybe that's something that you've been learning all along. Not that you were meant to do everything alone forever, but maybe before you could build well with others, you had to learn how to hear yourself clearly enough in order not to hand your life away to the wrong voice. Most people never have to answer the question, who am I when there is no one to tell me? And if you've lived this, you didn't have that luxury. You had to learn to trust something before you even knew it was real. And maybe that was the reason why you were forced to develop a completely different relationship with yourself. It may feel like others are moving faster, but maybe you're building something deeper, something that is actually yours. And it can make you feel like you don't belong anywhere. Like you're just observing life from the outside and like nothing really lands the way it should. But what if the question isn't why? What if it's what this way of living has been building in you that couldn't have been built any other way, and who you are becoming through it? Because some things cannot be just given to you. They cannot be explained or handed over. They have to be built in places where no one came.